Guten Morgen, herzlich willkommen, good morning, and welcome to Aotearoa to the Goethe-Institut. My name is Anna Kalpen, I'm the director of this institute at the German Cultural Institute here in Wellington. Clara and Lasse can probably not see me because I'm here by the side, but you know me, so that's all good. I'm very happy to see you all here this morning, and especially the panelists who will soon talk about what they're going to talk about, and I will not make this very long. I'm just very happy to see this happening. It all started 2 years ago when Clara came over to Wellington as an artist in residency at the residence that we have supported by the City Council, and that's how Clara and Joel met, and this is the birth of all this, I would call it. And without further ado, I'm handing over to Ralph and Hannah to introduce what's happening here tonight. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks so much for being here today, and thanks so much to the Goethe-Institut for hosting this event. We're really excited to have this conversation. My name is Ralph. I'm co-director of a company called Trick of the Light Theatre. We are an independent company. We came up around the same time as Binge. We both came through Vic, so we've been sort of making shows on a similar kind of path. We've also got quite into green theatre in the last few years, and we've just co-authored a book and a website which is going to come out soon, real soon, which is a green touring guide for artists in and from Aotearoa.
So my name is Hannah. Hello. I guess our main into this is that it's a really interesting new way of touring without a huge carbon footprint. So we first heard about this idea from Joel, and he's actually contributed an article to the work that we've been doing.
We should preface this by saying we haven't been able to see the show Disaster. We had our own show which opened last night, so we are the audience proxy in this conversation. And so we're going to be asking questions about how this all came to be, and then we'll open it up for some questions at the end. But I thought we'd begin by just going around and getting the other panelists to introduce themselves, what their roles are within their company, and and then we'll get stuck in.
Tiago?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro, kia ora. Morena koutou, ko Joel Baxendale tōku ingoa. I'm the creative director of Binge Culture, co-founder along with Ralph, and we started it in 2008 or 9, depending on where you take the first show from. But we've been making, I guess we were inspired by alternative kind of theatre practices from Europe when we were at university, actually in David O'Donnell's classes, so it's quite a nice little full circle right now in this room. But it's it was an amazing opportunity to meet Clara and actually get deep into someone else's practice. So I guess that's been a real, as a devising company, we've been making our own work for so long. We're not working with scripts or anything. It's a unique opportunity for us, and that's kind of where one of my main interests has been, as well as also we've been making lots of weird shows, like promenade ones or found space ones and tiny audiences that kind of sometimes make shows quite difficult to tour. So it's been a real interesting journey, this on lots of different angles. But yeah, also working with such lovely people as well. So I don't know if I'm going to say anything more about myself. That's enough.
Kia ora koutou, ko Ralph Upton, tōku ingoa, naka Ralph. I am the dramaturg on this project and also a member of Binge Culture. And our work is devised, made collaboratively usually, and it's usually about involving the audience in interesting ways that gives them agency in the performance and gets to something interesting, usually through a sense of humour and a kind of sense of looking at something from some kind of strange angle. And yeah, this is an interesting process because I think this is the first time that Binge Culture's ever had a script at the beginning of a process. Usually we have a script at the end. So it's been an interesting mix of our normal process and a sort of kind of adaptation. So yeah, looking forward to getting into it.
Great. Let's cross over to the other side of the world. Clara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, kia ora and good morning to Wellington. It's really nice to be back in the Goethe-Institut where I was 2 years ago, although it's unfortunately only on a screen. I'm a writer and managing director of Machina X. And yeah, meeting Joel 2 years ago was really crazy because it was like my second to last day in Wellington when we had coffee like 3 days before Christmas or something. And yeah, we had this like 2 hour time slot where we found out all these similarities about Binge Culture and Machina X and about their work and our work. And it was really like, I don't know, playing memory or something because it all was like, yeah, well, that's us. Like, yeah, twins separated at birth. So it was great to get to know all the artists in Wellington when I was back there. But there was definitely the highlight, and it's so great that we could join in this project together now. Maybe I'm heading over to Lasse and good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's really cool to see you starting the day, being in this opposite situation. I'm Lasse. I'm technical director of Machina X, and I had the joy of helping Binge Culture to navigate this very interesting process, which for me was really fun spotlights, having a glimpse into how they built this thing, and being able to help here and there, then just don't know what's happening next, and then the next moment it was had its opening night and was like, wow, when did they do this? How? I don't know, but was big joy for me to be part of getting this thing together from far away.
Great. Clara, I know you just mentioned, and Joel, you've mentioned about this meeting of these two companies being like twins separated at birth and finding all these similarities. I wondered how it went from that sort of happy accident to where you've got to now. How did you come upon the form of the International Show Exchange? What was the process?
I think generally when you meet someone that you feel, another artist that you feel aligned with, you automatically go to, how can we make something together? And so I think we were having some conversations along those lines for a while. But one of the things that we talked about while we were still in person was how we've made a lot of works that sometimes we felt the life of the show wasn't as long as it deserved. It's quite a, I felt like maybe it was the nature of the kind of work that we were making or the environment that we were producing it in. And so I can't quite remember. Clara, do you remember at what point we decided to pivot and look at an existing work?
It was your idea, I think. Maybe you're just too shy to claim it. But no, I think we were wondering like how could we cooperate, like being 18,000 kilometers away from each other, and also like, I mean, international co-productions are great, but they're often like, you join for a short period of time and then you create something new, but like how long will it last? You put all this energy in there, all this money in there, all this carbon footprint in there, and then it will be like there for a week or something, and then everyone goes back to normal, goes back home, and it kind of disappears. Yeah, so as I remember it, Joel and his colleagues came up with this idea of, just exchanging existing projects and giving them an opportunity to tour, giving them an kind of second life on another continent, and of course a new handwriting, because I mean, we won't be able to see the binge culture version of our show Disaster, unfortunately. But I'm sure it has its own handwriting and is like not just a restaging, but a whole new version of our play. Yeah, so that's how I remember it.
So is anyone up for just giving a summary of what is the International Show Exchange? How does it work?
Basically, I think when we sort of we looked at what works what works have not been able to get as long a life as they maybe deserved or we thought they deserved, and then I think you gave us a few options, Clara, of works you thought might be appropriate, and then we looked at some videos and things and made some. I think we kind of selected based on what was going to be the most interesting and for our artistic development.
Yeah, what felt kind of new to us and exciting, and Disaster I think felt exciting because it was like a new mode of engaging the audience, which we haven't done a lot of, which is puzzles. So I think that was maybe part of what brought us into that. And yeah, we had the existing script and the video and the conversation, and then at one point we got a cardboard box full of 12 beige telephones and a bunch of coloured wires and a whole lot of cool German newspapers and stuff. And so we got the physical, because there's a lot of unique physical infrastructure that comes with the show, or well, I guess a few boxes worth. And so we got that, and that was a little Christmas present. And
but the first part of first part of the exchange project was we did a 2-week sort of part-time workshop in July, where we were just we didn't have the pressure of the production coming up, and we were just sort of trying to get as deep into this show as possible and just understand what Mark and X's thinking was as they were developing it, kind of downloading, I guess, their artistic practice as much as possible, and then also in that point saying like, and now how can we, because it was super generous, it's been a really generous process where we've given each other a lot of rope to kind of adapt. So basically Clara said, like, do what you want, you don't have to ask for permission, So then we were sort of thinking about, okay, like that gives us the ability to make it, put our binge culture lens on it, or do it in a way that made the most sense for us and what the space that we were using and the audience that we thought we were going to be getting. But that process was probably the artistic exchange part of it, and then putting on the production was much more, I guess, practical. Much more like a kind of normal process, I guess. I think obviously still relying on these guys a lot, and particularly Lasse for some technical expertise and decoding some of the software in the little Arduino puzzles.
And then next year we'll have a similar process, but in reverse. We'll be helping Mark and X work on a show of ours called You and AI.
And did you go through a similar process of looking at some of the binge works, Lasse and Clara, and choosing one that would be a good fit for this project, to remount and reinterpret and recontextualize that code?
I think U&AI felt like such a perfect choice from the first sight that we didn't have like 3 projects to choose from. Because yeah, we did some shows, actually 3 different shows, who take place in public places like U&AI does, but I wouldn't say it's our strong suit right now. So we really hope to learn, doing U&AI, restaging U&AI next year in Düsseldorf, to get to see how they do things like this, like theater and plays in public places.
Cool. One of the things that excites me about hearing about this project is that you've said that it's more than just a licensing. It's not handing over a script. It's a deeper engagement in that. Could you maybe expand on what that is and what that means, that kind of artistic exchange?
Do you want?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a kind of a process of adaptation in a way that felt exciting. And I think for us, it's a mix of the familiar and the unfamiliar in a way. Like there's parts of disaster we describe to our audience as kind of escape room meets theatre. So the format of the work is that 12 people move through the Hannah Playhouse. They're solving puzzles that are tied to a kind of a narrative, but then there's also another story behind the scenes where the show is kind of failing or breaking under its own weight. There's stress, there's ambition, and things are going wrong. And I think it was interesting for us because we're like, we were sort of familiar with that meta narrative side, and we've made shows that have that, and we thought, we can bring our own sort of angle to that and our own sensibility because we love that kind of energy. But then it was like, great, here's a new way of giving the audience a task, which is what Binge always likes to do. What's the audience's job? What do they do? And it's like puzzles. Okay, we don't know how that works. So we've been able to learn about good ways of making satisfying problems for the audience that are different to the problems you've given them in the past.
And I think a unique or somewhat unique aspect to disaster is like these puzzles have been, I don't know how you describe, they've been constructed using a combination of like re-engineered old technology and a little bit of coding, and so I mean, Lasse, you probably are better at explaining how the show works, but it all kind of runs through one system. The little games are sending cues to the show running software, which sends lighting cues out or sound cues. And from a show technology or theatre technology point of view, that was a brand new learning experience for us as well. And I don't think you could have. I think we've probably spent 30 hours or something with Lasse over the whole period, like talking about how these work, and some of it was like troubleshooting, but a lot of it was understanding how this technology can be utilised, and that is something we'll be able to take forward into other works. And I don't think you would have got that by you might have come up with a new. You would have been, if we'd got a script alone, we would have just been using our own solutions that we'd already kind of were familiar with, and so it's like a whole new way of delivering a show as well on a practical level.
So would it be fair to say, so you have the script, you've got the physical properties that are part of the show, you got the software that the show ran on and the content, like the audio or whatever, or did you make that new? And then, but most importantly, you've got this close working relationship with the people who had already put the show on, so they could hold your hand and then also let you run for free. Yeah,
that's right. It was a very nurturing relationship, I felt. There was, very healthy. But, Lasse, you might be better at explaining exactly how all the components work together, because that was definitely one of the things I found the most
challenging?
Challenging but fascinating and unique about this process.
Yeah, I always like to say that it is a computer game in the end. Again, even though it's like, okay, it's a real or it's real props, real actors, but then again, it's a computer game because there's software in the back that puts the pieces together. But yeah, about the nurturing relationship, I must say, was one of the most pleasant work hours for me. These in between all the other stuff that was happening, because it also came in a how you say, not so came. I didn't always know when it was going to happen that they're going to need me again. So I was a little bit always hoping for maybe, because it was on the one side a little bit horrified because I didn't know, is it did we document things in a way, or is the stuff still working, or is it even possible to reconstruct it? And because it's not only about that it's complex or a lot of stuff, it's just nobody ever was building it thinking, oh, somebody in New Zealand is gonna rebuild it again. So that was horrifying for me, but in the same moment, it was such a pleasure to see it coming into place and see how you work with it, and how much less you needed information from us because you were puzzling things together for yourself. That was really interesting to watch from you, even though I know very small pieces of the story only, how things came together. But it was a lot of fun.
Sorry, you go.
Oh, I just wanted, that is a really interesting, that word puzzle is in my mind, because it's like, it's interesting how the work reflects in the process, and that there was this whole other puzzle game, which was, because the whole show is networked, right? So all of the puzzles actually trigger the lights, trigger the sound, everything is linking, and everything's on the Wi-Fi. And so there was this process of reverse engineering or puzzling through the technology, sometimes in German, by the way, so Google Translate, thank you. I really find it interesting when the processes, the show is reflected in the process, because there's this whole another layer that you don't see in the show of our puzzle game. Thanks, Ollie, who organised it.
And your disaster and ambition.
Right.
Your failures and your fears.
Yes, we know a bit about that.
Extremely meta on many levels.
How did the translation aspect of it play into this? I mean, that kind of forces a recontextualization that to a greater extent than if you had a script in the language that you're presenting it and you are, putting that on.
Well, I thought that process was really smooth, and that Goethe organised the translation, the Goethe-Institut, and so that was from the original script in German, and then from the English version, we were adapting it. And I think that it was really nice to have it translated in, because I guess the thing is if you adapting a work where you're like, what is the joke here? It's a bit harder. Then someone's already done that work of being like, this is the intention, this is the, and then we could be like, okay, great, I see what their joke was, and now I'm gonna,
and in some ways, the quality the quality of translated language is kind of fun to have as well, because the show exists on two levels. There's the show that's supposedly going on, and there's the stuff that's going behind the scenes. And in some ways, we stuck more to the translated script for the show, including the kind of quality of language that comes through translation, and even sort of the slightly unexpected phrasing of things like that. And I think that helped in some ways out contrast the I'm just playing myself part of the show, which I think we took more liberties with and brought more of that improvised kind of quality to it.
Yes, so just to explain, there's a lot of like meta where the performers kind of go in and out of character, and the contrast in the language is really useful as a theatrical device.
And what's the extent of translation that has occurred? I don't mean just in terms of words being translated, but is it mainly a sort of translation of sort of jokes or meanings of lines, or have you recontextualized in a broader sense than that to put it on here and speak to the audience here?
I think it is mainly like the meta-ness of it is really tricky to describe, because like kind of Ralph alluded to, there's this sort of there's the meta level of us trying to remake the show, and that kind of comes out in the work, and it's also site specific in that way, because as we've taken the seats at the roster out at the Hannah Playhouse, and so part of the work, I'm sure that I know Clara finds really or was kind of put into the show in the first place, or a big part of it was the idea of like ambition, and kind of biting off more than you could chew, and so when the characters do drop out, and you do see that the director character or the actor character, designer character, that it feels super present. And I know that quite a few audience members have been like, was that real? I'm like, no, of course they look like, of course we're not making 30 sets and tunneling into the next building, but there's this idea that
no snake aquarium either, right?
No, but
that's what you would say.
But it's hewing so close to the truth that, and so it's saying like Karen is Karen and Arlo is Arlo, and the Hannah Playhouse is the Hannah Playhouse, and this was a German show, and there's going to be hints of that throughout the script as well, and referencing the technology. It's all it feels extremely present in that way.
I think, Anna, did you have your...
I just wanted to add to the translation question, because we were so fortunate that one of our German teachers here in Wellington, Lydia, she just had come back from Germany, and she used to work at the University of Frankfurt in the theatre science department, and she is an award-winning translator for theatre pieces. So when Clara asked us if we can translate the script for Binge Culture, I was like, we should ask Lydia. And she knows the work of Machina X from Germany, and like always the performance scene in Germany. So we not just had someone who was like good on language, but who also knew the whole scene and everything, which I think really helped to translate this piece. And then you could adapt it for your own purposes.
Yeah, the translation was so, because we had the Google, or what I think it was DeepL translation, but there's the original one, and it was almost, you're kind of like, it's very hard to understand what the not what's going on. You sort of understand what's going on at a basic level, but to get then this translation, which was so skillfully done, you're like, this is what this scene is about, and this is what kind of what the joke is here. And there's a lot of subtle humour in the piece as well. So, very important to get that done first. Otherwise, I think it would have been much harder to understand there's so much going on in the show. It would have been much harder to figure out what the purpose of each scene was, and what these guys were going for.
I want to open this. Oh, sorry, you go, Clara. Were you wanting to?
I just wanted to add that I had a really good time with Lydia working on the translation, and I think you can see why DeepL or other AI things are not able to do the job yet. Hopefully, for example, there are a lot of wrongly used phrases in the script, and Lydia and I really had fun finding English expressions for that. And I think DeepL would just be confused with silly jokes like that.
Yes, there's one line. The die had been cast, the wheels were set in motion, the dog had its day. Just like, I don't know what the German for that is. I thought that was delightful.
We went through a similar international collaboration over the last couple of years where we were working with a company from Western Australia, and one of the things that we found really interesting is as a theatre company, you don't often get to see other people's process or other people's approach. You don't get to see behind the rehearsal room door. I wondered, Joel, you'd mentioned how seeing another company's approach and way of working made you look at your own way of working. I know when we were going through that process, we would go, oh, well, we work like this, but why do we work like this? Mm-hmm. Did you have a similar kind of response to working with this other company?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of parts to it. There's the kind of artistic vision and understanding someone else's artistic vision, and then there's the how you approach. For us, it's a big question: is how you approach the relationship with the audience, and then understanding how machina-X sort of approach that question. But then, also just really interesting to look at the composition of their company and the skills that are in their personnel, and then how that affects the output of the creative output as well. So there were many levels that I felt like I had downloaded. It felt like in the Matrix, Neo kind of comes out and I know Kung Fu. It's like I know machina-X. I think part of it is obviously putting on the show, but the conversations around it are probably the thing that is it's at least equally important. And the length of time that we've been able to do this over is, it's like in terms of actual hours is not huge, but the reflection time, because we were in Edinburgh doing Werewolf, and Clara came over and stayed with us for a bit then, and you can have much deeper conversations that way, over a longer period, and you sort of understand what the other person is asking is as much of or what the other person is trying to tell you, which like Clara was saying, over a couple of weeks is you don't get that depth.
Clara or Lasse, how about from your end? How's it been getting to open the lid and see into the binge process? I know you're at a different point in the process because you're not putting on you and AI until next year, but has that had any revelations for you about your ways of working?
Well, first of all, I'm super curious how it's going to go with you and I, having this experience from this side of the coins, so to speak. But I think it must be really interesting I'm really looking forward to, like you said, Joel, to have time to do this. I think it would always be interesting to say, okay, I would want to know about several groups, how they do their stuff and how their process is, and have a deeper look. But you cannot just take their script and read it. It won't help, and even if it takes a very short amount of time. But to have a little bit of money, to have a little bit of time to get into it. That sounds like a really good idea to me. To and have a reason or a target you're going for that makes it more easy to have an experience that lasts or that gives you new ideas. Looking forward.
We haven't yet really talked about one really interesting aspect of this, which is the green alternative to traditional touring, which is something we're very interested in. Was that something that was front of mind when you came up with this concept as a way to reduce the carbon impact of touring in person?
Yeah, I mean, it's always front of mind when you're making work in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously Europe is quite a big market, and sometimes we feel like our audience, like obviously there's an audience for our work in New Zealand, but we feel like there's also an audience in Europe, and that's maybe because for the tradition that some of our, that we've been drawing on, the theatrical traditions have kind of come from that part of the world. But then, yeah, it's to get that level of relationship with kind of presenters or venues, and there's a lot of like going back and forth. And I think about, and obviously really appreciate the opportunities I've had to go to that part of the world, sometimes with CNZ funding, for example, to get to Edinburgh and just network. But that's like, it's very, it's a bit of a hack really, when you can say, hey, you who are based in this country or based in this part of the world and already have all of this networks, already understand the ecology, let's, that's like it feels like a hack, right? To kind of, to then get, for example, like Clara, you often talk about you have a strong relationship with FTT Dusseldorf, so that's a particular venue with that I don't think I'd ever even heard of, so I think that aspect to it, it's like a time save as well as, like sometimes you have to be somewhere in person to have to get those relationships, but Clara and Lasse are there in person creating those relationships. So then if we, Machina and Binge Culture, have a relationship with each other, the web expands much. Well, I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah. And something that you've talked about is, there's this more sustainable alternative to touring, and obviously you're also saving costs on flights in terms of ping, as well as in terms of the carbon footprint. But then there are these benefits of, it's not necessarily all or nothing. So perhaps one day you might take the work to Berlin yourselves, and you've got this base to build on. You've got these connections and a bit more of a sense of the lay of the land. Yeah,
that's right. I think because it works this way as well. Like sometimes it's quite hard to bring international. I mean, sometimes hard to bring international work here, and I've often seen in the past there's been like a way to do it is to work with locals to kind of reduce the costs. But I kind of feel like the way we've done it, it's not just been, hey, get these local actors to, fill out your cast or fill out your production team. It's about, we've had a really awesome artistic exchange that's and a lasting impact as well on top of that. So, yeah.
It's like the resources that you might have spent on airfares and accommodation instead have allowed you to have this incredibly long, deep process, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Which you can't do when you're paying for accommodation or
you would get 3 weeks rather than 2 years.
That's right. It's like maximising, if you are going to have a carbon footprint, you are going to put that money in what, it could go onto these very big budget items, or it can be spread out and maximised. Yeah. I mean, the residencies, I feel like it's felt like a bit like a residency, if we in that respect, where you're given latitude and to figure something out over time, which if you're and that's not to say that there's no place for international travel. Obviously, it sparked from
being in person.
But it's you're just getting more bang for your buck.
Has anyone done any spreadsheet or back of the napkin kind of calculation of what the comparable cost would be if say Machina X were to come out here with their work? How does it compare as a process?
We haven't done that, but that's a really good idea.
Yeah, it should be done. Yeah.
Yeah. There was just 2 boxes of kind of like key kind of engineered props, right? That was sent from Germany, and then if you come and see Disaster, you'll see that there's tons and tons of set design that has obviously been saved on, we've saved on freight, and also it's quite adaptable. We bought a bunch of shelves that are on wheels that were we'll use these for other shows definitely, and it's actually better for us to have them, keep them on this side of the world, right, and then rather than freight them to Germany, freight them back, and just send the small items. Yeah.
I think we should open up for questions, but I just wanted to ask, so would you do this again with a different company?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and are you on artist Tinder looking?
Not, but our first love is always.
I mean, this is
They're right here.
This is a primary relationship, but it's an open.
I think for me, it's absolutely, because I think it's really good because you can get certain patterns of ways of thinking about your work or what you make, or make the same show again or whatever, and it's just a great way of going okay, here's a whole different way of thinking, and you're learning by doing, by embodying something, and and so I think that's really the really exciting thing is it's kind of like a transfusion of creative blood, which is
I honestly don't think I've learned felt like I've learned as much since university. When you actually not just doing, but
Well, that's interesting. Just I guess my last thought on that is just seeing you in the audience, David, reminds me this is kind of how we started in terms of getting components in the mail from theatre companies overseas and going, ooh, what happens when we play with these tools, and what does that feel like? And I just love that. Yeah.
And there's less of an opportunity outside of a university context.
Yes, that's
usually.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll throw it open to questions, and then we can come back in, and if any of you have any aspects of the project that you're really keen to talk about, we can get that in as well. But thought we'd check now if anyone has any questions about the project that they were wanting to ask. We've got a microphone, which will mean people who are watching online will be able to hear. And is this being recorded as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask, feel free to stick your hand up and we'll get a mic to you.
Very formal.
Thank you. It's such an exciting project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on Sunday.
I'm not sure if it's on. Is it turned?
It's not.
Well spotted.
Okay, oh, there we go. Thank you very much for sharing this knowledge. I'd love to hear more from Lasse and Clara about the original spark and development and life of Disaster in Germany.
Well, actually, it came from a pretty disastrous situation because we couldn't get funding, or we couldn't get enough funding to do a show. So usually we're in a pretty luxurious situation in Berlin, because we get some, the rough translation would be concept funding, which is you don't get money just for one project, but for 4 years. Where you can spend money on infrastructure, our production manager, and also so that's a really good thing. But we are also we need to do one new project each year in Berlin to get this money. So we were having this, but that's not enough to do an entire new show. But we couldn't manage to, get other funding or just a tiny one from Switzerland. So we did have money, but not really so much. Disaster. So we had a really small team, and it was like also a pretty rough phase for our company because people were leaving the company and stuff. So it actually was a bit disastrous. But then we decided so we talked about like how we always want to do like the best thing in the world when we start a new project. Like we have all these ideas and it's got to be so big and we want to build this and this and that and the script has to be amazing and we want to build all these ideas and pieces in there. But then in the end, there's only like so much that you can do during, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks of production. So and we kind of decided to make this ambition to be the topic of our game. And also we were loving all these meta games, like video games that were published back then, like the Stanley Parable or the Beginner's Guide, which are like games who are who are meta games about doing video games or being a game designer. So we were really loving to play those games and wanted to see how we could do that in theater. I think that was like the main idea in the beginning. Do you want to add something, Lasse? How do you remember? It's been 6 years ago. It's like really crazy to go back in this year.
How clear your memory is about it. No, that wraps it up very, very well, I think.
And when was the last time you put on Disaster yourselves?
Good question. I could look it up on the website, but I don't dare to close the window.
But there's been a gap.
We did quite.
Time.
Yeah, we
in
did
2019 or 20, right?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it must have been short before the pandemic hit. Must have been the last time we were showing it in Basel, I think. It was touring quite well, and I really enjoyed doing it because it's such a fun piece to show and to see also yourself. I think it was one of the pieces we ourselves secretly love the most because it's so much about what we do, and we were always a little afraid that it's going to be a little too much about what we do. That's also why I found it so cool that Binge Culture was choosing that one. But I was like, are they going to have the same problem as us that we think, it's a piece for us and not for the audience? But then again, the experience was that it works quite well.
Okay, did anyone else have any questions who's watching that they wanted to ask?
Kia ora. Thank you all for this. This is very inspiring and exciting. Just thinking about artist Tinder. If anyone can help me out. That those kind of international collaborations with other companies who you're so aligned with, that feels like such a special connection, and is really like the impetus for this going so well. So I was wondering, if you have any advice for the room on making those connections, or kind of like blue sky thoughts about the kind of support that you would need to make that available, to make that kind of network or Tinder available to other artists to kind of do similar projects.
Well, I guess our experience was obviously came out of the residency. What's the name of the residency?
It's called the Wellington residency.
Wellington residency. So I guess it's pretty hard to maybe initiate something without being in person. So that's, I guess, what would your experience be? You kind of need that initial date.
Yeah, I mean, having the network of Goethe institutes around the world is really something special for sure, because often you have experts there who know the artistic scene in their country or in their city. So Anna and Hannah were able to connect me with a lot of artists in Wellington. So yeah, I had like 2 months of a dating game there until I finally met Joel.
And to be fair, Fiona did say that you were coming right at the start, and I was like, well, I'm sure we can make something happen. And probably forgot about it, because obviously Fiona has more of a connection with, so knew about you coming. But well, I guess the lesson there for me was, if there's an opportunity like that to meet someone from out of town, don't put it off till the last minute.
I was sort of thinking when we were in Edinburgh, I think something you do really well, Joel, is like remembering that the seeing other people's work and the meeting them and talking with them and the chats after the show. It's like sometimes you have this feeling like we're doing the transition or the changeover, and it's like the people who are talking to someone after the show, it's kind of like that's part of the job.
Yeah.
That's part of the work, and it's something I don't like do as naturally, but you do better. But it's like it's kind of being in person, being in those festivals, and creating the time and energy to connect and go, hey, I like the show and here are the reasons, and let's have a coffee. It's like just that's valuable. It's a really valuable part of the process, isn't it?
Yeah, easy to forget when you're so busy going from, just from thing to thing to thing that, you do have to make time for it and prioritize it. It's like, I've just finished a show and I'm tired and I just want to get out of costume and pack up and let the next people do their show and get a drink. But it's like if there's an audience member who's come in and been like, hey, I'm really buzzed by what I've just seen, it's like you have to respect that, and it's only going to be an opportunity, or a potential opportunity. So, I think it's just something I would say generally about. It's just, I guess we're all hustling all the time, and then it's like that time for reflection, the time for those conversations. I really appreciate Barbarian. For facilitating so much of that kind of space in Wellington. And I guess it's like, to answer your question, it's like, I don't think there's a single kind of, opportunity where those conversations happen, but
Our own experience with an international collaboration working with Last Great Hunt certainly came out of IRL hangouts first. We were sort of going on the same touring circuit, and it took us a few years before we plucked up the courage to ask them on a date and see if we could make a show together. I don't know how I could imagine.
We had also had numerous festival directors say to us, "You should make a show. You guys should make a show."
But I don't know how it would be going into that process cold if it wasn't a company that you didn't spend some time with previously. One thing that I would say, based on our experience, and I wonder if it's true of yours as well, in terms of working in different parts of the world, things take longer. Time works in a different way, and we were certainly able to have that kind of really deep engagement and get stuck in some big sort of Zoom sessions. But we would find our brains would get fried in a way, staring at a screen, that we wouldn't if we were in a room together. So the process had to be sort of more spread out. Is that something that you experienced as well?
Yeah, I think that's also just, healthy in general to kind of take a bit longer and, rather than rush towards an end goal,
think that seems to be, maybe it's more something that we do here as longer processes of which is great in many ways, to work intensively and then pause and reflect and work intensively rather than solid kind of rehearsal blocks. And I think part of that is just working around limitations of availability and communication.
Are there any other questions?
Could I just add something to the question from the audience, because I want to tell another story from a company we are friends with in Germany, because just on the topic of how can you meet artists like that, how can you find your own theater date? So there was a theater group from, I think, Namibia, and they just sent an email to the city council of Hanover, because Hanover is like how do you say, they have a twinning agreement. They're twinning towns with the city they live in. So they were just writing to the city council, hi, we are this group from Namibia, and we would love to have an international exchange with some theater group from your city. So the city council kind of connected them with James and Priscilla is the name of the group. And then they flew over to Namibia, spent, I think, 10 days or 2 weeks with them, and are working on I think they're working on a project right now. I'm not so sure about that, but that could also be a way just to like write to somebody who already has a network and can connect you to somebody like a city council, or like the Goethe-Institut or British Council or Institut Français, or
Cool.
I also think about the artist in love from a more facilitator point of view, and I think that we as facilitators of these connections are often too much focused on what is the work and what is the outcome and what are their like goals and who are they meeting with. And I have the experience from my previous work at the Berlin Film Festival that it's often more the social part where the real connections are made. So you can come to the festival and you see all the films and you have a lot of production meetings that is like going through, it's like minutes meetings. But then you go to a reception in the evening and you stand at the bar next to someone and you get chatting, and that's the real connection you make that helps your work in the next couple of years. So I think we as facilitators should not underestimate this. So even if you send someone to a festival and that person just goes partying, it might be worth much more than sending someone over with a ready project, not making any good connection, because it's just work meetings. And my experience is, and I always encourage people like to get out of their work bubble and try to connect with people that feel very random at the beginning, but might end up being their close partner for the next couple of years work-wise.
Cool. Unless anyone has any questions that they were wanting to ask, I just thought I'd throw back to the panel and say, are there any aspects of the project that you would like to speak to, or bits that we haven't covered yet that you'd like to touch on?
I just really like to acknowledge all of the support that we've got for this project. We got our funding from Creative New Zealand, which has been providing a base for us for the last couple of years, which is really helps with that kind of long-term thinking, and obviously the connections and the support through Goethe-Institut, not only to facilitate this meeting and of minds, but then to help find further sources of funding, and in particular the International Co-Production Fund, which is which has basically allowed us to do this properly. Give us the space that it needs, I think. Obviously, like the support of the Hannah Playhouse, which is, we've taken the roster out and we've been occupying it for like almost 3 weeks now. That's a council, making that available for local artists at a highly discounted rate. It would not have been possible a year ago, or 2 years ago, whatever, before they made that switch. So there's a bit of like a few puzzle pieces that have really helped, and I just think it shows that when the infrastructural support is there, it's like awesome, amazing things happen. And yeah, so I just want to acknowledge all of those people.
Clara and Lasse, were there any final thoughts you wanted to share before we close this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really curious doing the Binge Culture Show next year, probably in May in Düsseldorf, because it really, it sounds so cool what you are saying about working with our work, that I'm really, really looking forward to get this done. And yeah, it's that's not a new information, but I think that's what I would want to say in the end again.
Well, thanks.
Such a nice. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Just want to say it was such a cool opportunity to revisit Disaster from this side. And really, also really happy to have met you guys. Even that I've never been in person in front of you, I feel the connection too. That's really interesting to me too. I think what Clara and you, how you met, it seems to it sparkles over, some Zoom calls made a good connection.
Yeah, I was actually a bit afraid of like, how is it going to work with the other people in our companies who have never met in person, because I was like, okay, I met this guy. He's called Joel. He has this company. It's called Binge Culture, and they are doing the exact same thing as we do. Not the exact same thing, but you gotta meet them. And then I was like, okay, maybe it won't work. Maybe they will just be like, yeah, okay, but why would I spend my early mornings or late nights with some people across the globe who I have never met, explaining technical objects to them till midnight. But well,
that worked really well for me. Yeah, it was a very nice social connection, even though it sounds like work only, but it was mostly,
I just wanted to add as well, like that's the other part. Maybe I'm really excited to see what Machina X do with our show, and I feel like that's going to reveal a whole bunch of things about our own process. You know, like I'm really looking forward to the shoe being on the other foot. I think that will be like very revealing. And I don't know. Yeah.
You're so brave. I can't imagine letting someone see like the inside of my working process. I spend a lot of time polishing up the outside to look good.
Don't look behind the...
It's dark in there.
It's held together with duct tape.
Yeah, I guess that's right. My kind of, final thought is that, it just reminds me how much all of these things are built on sort of trust, and it's wonderful to have these guys trust, because if we didn't have that, then it would be a nightmare, because you would feel like you're, going through someone's drawers. So I thought that was a really wonderful aspect of it, and
Well, thank you all so much for sharing this process with all of us, and thank you all for coming, and thank you to the Goethe-Institut for hosting in this beautiful space. Are there still tickets people can get to go to Disaster? Sunday, cool. We can go. Oh, congratulations. Otherwise we'll have to go and see you and AI. Thanks so much.
And thanks so much for hosting. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah, have a nice sleep.
Yeah.